Hey everyone, welcome back to the deep dive. I'm really excited for this one because we're diving into learning styles.
Yeah, this should be fun.
It is. I've always been kind of fascinated by how people learn differently. Right. And so today we're going to explore how understanding your unique learning style can really make a difference, especially if you're trying to succeed in engineering.
Yeah, absolutely.
But honestly, this stuff is relevant for basically anyone.
It really is. It's about unlocking your full potential no matter what you're passionate about.
Totally. So to guide us on this deep dive today, we've got some excerpts from Learning Styles and Engineering Success, and also this really interesting article from UMS Active Learning in Engineering Education News from just last November.
Oh, yeah, I read that one. It was good.
Yeah, it was really fascinating. So we're going to be talking about something called the Index of Learning Styles, or ILS for short.
Right.
And it breaks down how we learn best in 4 key dimensions: active versus reflective, sensing versus intuitive, visual versus verbal, and then sequential versus global.
Each one of those is like a spectrum, It's not about putting yourself in a box, but more about understanding where your natural tendencies lie.
Yeah, it's like having a personalized user manual for your brain, right?
Exactly.
So okay, let's jump into the first one. Active versus reflective learners.
Okay.
Active learners, you guys are the ones who learn by doing right. You're all about jumping into group projects, hands-on activities, testing things out in the real world. You're not afraid to just get your hands dirty.
If you're building a robot.
Yeah.
An active learner would be right there with the soldering iron, figuring out how to make it move, even if they make a few mistakes along the way,
Yeah.
It's all part of the learning process for them.
Totally. And then, reflective learners, it's not that you don't enjoy hands-on stuff.
Right.
But you prefer to kind of take a step back, really process the information, think things through before you dive in.
Yeah, exactly. You'd be more likely to carefully read the robot's instructions, maybe even research different design approaches or sketch out some plans before, picking up a tool.
That's interesting because I remember when I first started learning how to code, I would just dive right into writing the program, and it was a total mess.
Oh, yeah.
It took me forever to debug it, and I wish I had taken a more, reflective approach back then.
Well, we all learn differently, right? That's what's so cool about this whole ILS thing. It helps us understand those differences and really use them to our advantage.
Yeah, absolutely. So, okay, let's say you're studying for a really tough engineering exam, right?
Okay.
How might an active learner prepare versus the reflective learner?
So an active learner, they might organize a study group, get together with some friends, use flashcards to quiz each other, or even build models to try to visualize some of those complex concepts. They thrive on that interaction and actually applying the knowledge. Now, a reflective learner, on the other hand, they might prefer to find a quiet spot. Reread their notes and textbooks, maybe create their own practice problems. They really need that time to internalize the information.
So it's all about finding what works best for you. There's no right or wrong way to learn as long as you're actively engaging with the material.
Exactly. And that brings us to our next dimension, which is sensing versus intuitive learners.
Okay.
So sensing learners, you guys are all about practical applications. You're drawn to concrete examples, real-world scenarios, those clear step-by-step instructions.
Yeah, if you're learning about circuits, you'd rather build one and see how it works, right? Tinker around with it, maybe even try to improve the design.
Exactly. And that's super valuable, especially in engineering. You need people who can take those theoretical concepts and translate them into something functional that works in the real world.
Yeah. For sure.
Yeah.
Now, intuitive learners, you approach things a bit differently, right? You're kind of fascinated by the why behind things. You enjoy those abstract concepts, the theoretical frameworks, and exploring the bigger picture.
Yeah, you might be less interested in actually building the circuit yourself and more interested in diving deep into the physics and the math behind how it actually functions. You want to understand this underlying principles at play.
I can definitely see how both approaches are essential in a field like engineering. You need that balance between practical know-how and then also the innovative thinking to really push those boundaries.
Right. Imagine a team that's designing a new type of engine.
Yeah.
You've got your sensing learners who are focused on the nuts and bolts, making sure it's efficient and reliable. And then you've got those intuitive learners exploring those cutting edge materials and pushing the limits of what's even possible.
It's like a perfect partnership.
Yeah.
Each one bringing their own strengths to the table. And speaking of different ways of seeing things, let's move on to visual versus verbal learners. So visual learners, you learn best when you can literally see the information. diagrams, flowcharts, videos, color coding your notes. Those are your best friends.
You might struggle to follow a lecture that's just words on a PowerPoint, but if that same information was presented visually with graphs and animations and like real-world examples, you'd be able to absorb it way more easily.
Think about the notes you take. Are they filled with doodles and mind maps and like arrows pointing everywhere?
Yeah.
Or are they like pages and pages of meticulously organized text?
It's a good indicator of where you might fall on that visual-verbal spectrum.
Yeah, totally. And if you're a verbal learner, though, you thrive on the spoken and written word. You remember things better when you hear them in a lecture or discuss them with others or write summaries in your own words.
Yeah, even just the act of taking notes, even if you never look at them again, it can help solidify that information in your mind.
And it's not just about like taking notes either. You might find that recording lectures or joining study groups where you can actually talk through the concepts or even teaching the material to someone else helps you learn best.
That's a good one.
Right. And that's where it gets really interesting because sometimes it's not just one or the other. Like you might be primarily visual,
right?
But you find that incorporating some of those verbal techniques like writing down key terms also helps.
Absolutely. The key is to be aware of your preferences and then experiment with different strategies to see what works best for you. It's all about personalizing that learning experience, you know?
Totally. Okay, so we've talked about active versus reflective, sensing versus intuitive, and visual versus verbal learners.
Right, a lot of ground covered.
We have. But there was one more piece of this learning style puzzle that we really need to explore, and that is sequential versus global learners.
Okay.
So this dimension is all about how we approach and organize information.
Yeah, how we like to see things laid out.
Exactly.
So sequential learners, you guys thrive on logic and order. You really prefer that step-by-step approach, clear outlines and understanding each piece of the puzzle before you even move on to the next one.
Yeah, I can relate to that for sure. When I'm like tackling a complex engineering problem, I find it super helpful to break it down into smaller, more manageable chunks.
Right.
Like I need to see that logical progression or else I just get totally overwhelmed.
It makes sense, and that's a huge asset in a lot of engineering fields, actually. Think about designing a complex piece of software.
Oh, yeah.
You need that systematic, step-by-step approach to make sure that every line of code works seamlessly with all the others.
Yeah, totally. But global learners, you guys see the world a little differently, right?
Yeah, a little bit.
Like you need the big picture first. Just tell me the overall goal, the grand vision, and then I can dive into the details and figure out how everything connects.
It's like you need that context first.
Yeah.
You might jump around a bit, revisit concepts multiple times until you have that like aha moment where everything just clicks into place.
It's almost like you're assembling a jigsaw puzzle without looking at the picture on the box first.
Oh, that's a good one.
Right. You see all these individual pieces, and then suddenly you see how they all fit together to create that complete image.
I like that analogy a lot. And that ability to see connections and patterns, that's super valuable, especially when it comes to innovation and problem solving.
Yeah, for sure.
Think about brainstorming new product ideas. A global learner might be the one who connects those seemingly unrelated concepts and comes up with that like truly groundbreaking solution.
Yeah, that makes sense.
Yeah.
So how do these different learning styles like actually play out in a real world engineering setting?
So imagine you've got a team of engineers and they're tasked with designing a new bridge.
Okay.
You're going to have people from all along that learning style spectrum,
right,
each bringing their own unique strengths to the table.
So you might have like an active learner who's just eager to jump right in and start sketching out those initial designs.
Right.
Maybe even building like a quick prototype to test out some ideas.
Yeah. And then you've got your reflective learner who takes those initial designs and like carefully analyzes them, considering potential weaknesses, researching different materials, and really thinking through those long-term implications.
Yeah. And of course, you've got your sensing learners who are like laser focused on the practical aspects of the design, making sure that the bridge is structurally sound, that it meets all the safety regulations, and that it can actually be built within the budget and those time constraints.
And let's not forget about those intuitive learners. They might be the ones who are pushing the boundaries, exploring like innovative materials or construction techniques,
right,
coming up with those like out-of-the-box solutions that really set the project apart from everything else.
It's like having a perfectly balanced ecosystem.
Yeah.
Each learning style is playing a critical role in the success of the project.
But here's where it gets really interesting.
Okay.
What happens when there's a mismatch between an engineer's learning style and their work environment?
Oh, yeah.
That's when things can get a little tricky.
You know, I've actually experienced that firsthand. In one of my early engineering jobs, I was constantly frustrated because I felt like I was being forced into a box that didn't fit my learning style.
Oh, no.
I'm a very visual learner.
Okay.
And I need to see things laid out in a way that makes sense to me visually.
Right.
But my boss at the time, he was very much a verbal learner.
Oh, wow.
He would give me these like long, detailed instructions. And I would just get lost in a sea of words.
So that must have been really tough.
It was.
Yeah.
It was really frustrating. And if he had understood that I was a visual learner,
right,
he might have like provided me with diagrams or flowcharts or even just sketched out his ideas on a whiteboard, you know?
It would have made a huge difference, I bet.
It would have. And that's why it's so important for both individuals and teams to really understand their own learning styles and how they can best work together.
Yeah, absolutely. It's about recognizing that there's no one right way to learn or to work, for that matter.
Right.
What really matters is finding what works best for you and then being able to advocate for your needs.
So that brings us to the role of educators.
Yes.
And how they can like create learning environments that support this diversity of styles.
Right.
And our sources had some really great insights on this.
They did.
One key takeaway was the importance of providing a variety of learning experiences.
Yeah.
Like instead of just relying solely on traditional lectures, incorporate hands-on activities, group projects, even field trips.
Mix it up.
Yeah. I remember one of my favorite engineering professors in college.
Oh, yeah.
He would always bring in real-world examples to illustrate the concepts we were learning.
That's cool.
Like he would show us videos of bridges collapsing airplanes, taking off robots, performing complex tasks.
Oh, wow.
It made the material so much more engaging and memorable.
Yeah, you can actually see it in action.
Exactly. And it's about appealing to all those different learning styles. You know, you're providing visual learners with those concrete examples. Active learners with the opportunity to engage in hands-on activities, and then global learners with that glimpse of the big picture.
Yeah, you're hitting all the bases.
Exactly. Another important strategy that our sources highlighted was using technology to personalize learning.
Oh, yeah. Technology is huge these days.
It is. There are so many amazing tools available now that allows students to learn at their own pace.
Right.
And in a way that suits their individual style.
Think about those online learning platforms that allow students to choose between video lectures, interactive simulations, and even virtual reality experiences.
That's amazing.
And they can also connect with other learners through like forums and chat groups, creating that like truly collaborative learning environment.
It's about empowering students to take ownership of their own learning journey.
Yeah, I love that.
And that's something that's going to be even more critical as we move into the future.
Oh, for sure. The world is changing so rapidly, and the skills that are in demand today might be obsolete tomorrow.
Yeah, especially in a field like engineering.
Definitely.
Engineers need to be lifelong learners, constantly adapting to new technologies and challenges.
And the key to that is really understanding how you learn best and then actively seeking out those opportunities to grow and evolve.
It's about having that growth mindset, you know?
Right.
That willingness to embrace new ideas and challenge yourself to step outside of your comfort zone. Okay, so we've covered like a ton of ground today.
We have.
Exploring all these different dimensions of learning styles.
It's a lot to take in.
It is. But before we wrap up, I want to make sure we like leave everyone with some concrete takeaways.
Yeah, how can we actually use this stuff?
Exactly.
It's one thing to know about learning styles.
Right.
But it's another thing to actually put it into practice.
We've talked about the what, but now let's get to that. So
Exactly. How can you actually use this information to like enhance your learning, improve your work, and ultimately just be more successful?
Right, because knowledge is only powerful when we can apply it.
I totally agree.
So let's say you're like an engineer working on a super complex project and you're just feeling stuck.
Okay.
Like hitting a wall.
Yeah, we've all been there.
How can understanding these learning styles actually help you in that situation?
Well, first off, it's about recognizing that your teammates might be approaching the problem from totally different angles based on their own learning preferences.
Right.
Like if you're a sequential learner and you're getting frustrated because your colleague, a global learner, seems to be like jumping around between ideas, take a step back.
Yeah.
Remember, they need that big picture first.
Right.
Before they can dive into all those little details.
Okay.
Maybe try presenting your ideas in a more holistic way.
Right.
Outlining that overall goal before you break it down into all those steps.
That makes sense.
And if you're that global learner, you know, to try to be mindful of your sequential teammates.
Right.
and their need for structure. Make sure you're communicating your overall vision and how all those seemingly random ideas actually connect to the bigger picture.
It's all about finding that common language, that way to like bridge those learning style gaps.
Absolutely. And it goes beyond just teamwork,
Yeah.
Understanding your own personal learning style can help you become a much more effective self-directed learner.
Which is like so crucial in a field like engineering, where the technology is constantly evolving.
Oh yeah, for sure.
Like if you know you're a visual learner, don't try to force yourself to learn from dense textbooks.
Right.
Seek out videos, online tutorials, or even create your own diagrams.
Yeah, anything to make it visual.
Yeah, to help you really grasp those concepts.
Exactly.
And if you're an active learner, don't just passively listen to lectures. Find ways to apply what you're learning.
Yeah, get your hands dirty.
Exactly. Whether it's building a prototype, running simulations, or even just explaining the concept to someone else.
Yeah, teaching is a great way to learn.
It is.
The key is to be proactive.
Right.
Take ownership of your learning journey.
I love that. So as we wrap up this deep dive into learning styles.
Yeah, this was a good one.
It was. I will leave everyone with a challenge.
Oh, I love a challenge.
Think about one concrete action that you can take this week based on everything we've talked about today.
Okay, I like it.
Maybe it's trying out a new study technique, advocating for your needs in a team setting, or even just having a conversation with a colleague about learning styles.
Yeah, just start the conversation.
Exactly. And remember, this is just the beginning.
Right.
There's a whole world of resources out there.
Oh, yeah.
To help you like delve deeper into this index of learning styles and really personalize your learning experience.
That's the goal.
It is. One resource I always recommend is the official Index of Learning Styles website.
It's a great one.
You can take a free assessment there to get a more detailed picture of your own preferences.
Nice.
And there are tons of articles and tips to help you actually apply that knowledge.
Awesome.
So keep exploring, keep experimenting, and keep learning.
Yeah, never stop learning.
Because the more you understand about how you learn best, the more you can unlock your full potential in any field.
Engineering or anything else.
Exactly. Thanks for joining us on this deep dive into learning styles. And until next time, keep those brains engaged and happy learning, everyone.